Hey everybody, I'm Bill. I am the salty old Marine. Today I want to talk about preparation. When you're applying for a VA disability, it pays to be prepared. Like the Boy Scouts, be prepared, right? So let's run through some of those things in today's video. So when I was applying for VA disabilities, I had to learn a lot of different lessons, and some of them were very difficult to learn, but I did learn them, so I would like to pass that along to you. What do you need to do to prepare for a VA disability claim? Well, first of all, you really need a diagnosis. So whatever it is you're claiming, you have to have a diagnosis. You're not a doctor. At least I'm not a doctor. You're probably not a doctor. We can't diagnose ourselves, at least not to the VA's satisfaction. I can say, I get migraines. I know I get migraines. I can say I get acid reflux. I definitely know I get acid reflux, but that doesn't prove it. So I need a current diagnosis. For that, I've got to go see a medical specialist, a doctor, somebody who can diagnose me with whatever it is that I'm planning to claim, right? That's number one. Number two, I need an in-service event. So in other words, if I'm going to claim migraines, I need to prove to the VA's satisfaction that those migraines were caused by or began during my active duty service. If I can't prove that, I can rely on things like personal statements and buddy letters showing that that might have happened while I was serving on active duty. However, I could also file that as a secondary claim. So I could say, well, I'm service-connected for PTSD, and I believe my PTSD caused my migraines. Okay, that's fine. That's a secondary claim. You're allowed to do that. The VA is set up to permit that. But now that's called a theory of entitlement, so I'm going to need to build some more evidence in. I'm going to need things like a disability benefit questionnaire, a DBQ, which I would get my doctor to fill out for me. It confirms a diagnosis, and if the doctor wants to put more information in there about how that affects you on a day-to-day basis, that can also help you with your claim. So you get a DBQ, you get a diagnosis, you fill out a personal statement, you get buddy letters if those are required. Your service records, your treatment records, or your VA medical records, or your private healthcare records, you collect all those up together, right? And you scan those and make those into like PDF forms. All of those go up into your claim. In addition, if you want to develop what's called a fully developed claim, an FDC, you might also consider going out and paying for a Nexus letter or asking your doctor to write you a Nexus letter. A Nexus letter is something that connects the current diagnosis to the in-service event or to the secondary service connection if that's what you're claiming. So the science may support, for example, that my PTSD caused my migraines, but now I've got to show that to the VA. I don't have to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt, but I do have to show it on at least as likely as not basis. So what do I do to do that? I go out and get what they call a Nexus letter. It's actually called an independent medical opinion, an IMO, but most people call it a Nexus letter, and that's fine. How do you get a Nexus letter? You can ask your doctor to fill one out. If they want to fill one out, they will. I'm told a lot of VA doctors will not. It's the way it goes. It's not fair. I wish that it was different, but unfortunately in my case, and probably in a lot of yours, I had to go out and purchase a IMO on the market. There are doctors who specialize in this. They are trained professionals, they have licenses, they have experience, and they're qualified to talk about what causes what, right? So they have all the medical studies and the science information, and they can put that all into their medical opinion. They review your records. In some cases, they interview you, and then they come to a conclusion and they support that with facts and evidence. And they write that all up in a letter that says at least as likely as not, or more likely than not. And that goes into your claim as well. Now, if you do those things, and I did those things, and the VA agrees that your claim is what they call fully developed, right? You may skip a CNP exam, a compensation and pension exam, and you actually may go directly to what's called an ACE review. An ACE is acceptable clinical evidence. That's what ACE stands for. And basically it's a CNP exam only without you there, is what it is. So a person who would be a CNP examiner, meaning a medical professional qualified in the field that you're claiming, is going to look at all your documentation that you've submitted, and then they're going to fill out their own DBQ, and they're going to fill out what's called a medical opinion, which is essentially a Nexus letter of their own. And typically, you don't get to see that. Now, if I didn't file a Nexus, and I didn't file a DBQ, all the rater would have to look at would be what the examiner wrote. And if the examiner writes something negative, like less likely than not, I'm probably going to lose my claim. So I did provide my own DBQ. I did provide my Nexus letter. Now, if push comes to shove and the reviewer doesn't agree with me, it becomes like a 50-50 match between mine and theirs. And according to VA rules, the veteran's supposed to get the benefit of the doubt. I'm not claiming they always do, but those are the rules. Now, in addition to that, once I received my ACE review and it was done, right? I knew about it only because the ACE reviewer called me on the phone and asked me a couple of questions, but sometimes they won't even do that. So I just watched my files in my VA portal until I saw that the DBQ had been submitted to the VA. It shows up in your claim under files, right? I immediately filed a Freedom of Information Act request, a FOIA request for CNP exam only. I know it was an ACE review, but there's still CNP exams as far as the VA is concerned. So I filed a FOIA request for only the CNP exam. I got the result back in less than 2 weeks. What that told me was what the reviewer said. I got to see the DBQ they wrote. I got to see the medical opinion that they wrote. And I got to prepare based on what I suspected was going to happen next. So if that reviewer had said less likely than not, I would know that I needed to gear up for a potential appeal, maybe a higher level review, or maybe a supplemental claim and submit even more information, more evidence. If the reviewer in fact wrote at least as likely as not, and I have a Nexus letter that also says at least as likely as not, I could kind of rest easy because there's very little chance at that point that the rater is going to go against both of those and disapprove my claim. At that point, I actually think the claim is going to be approved. And in fact, that's exactly what happened in every case. So it pays to prepare. That's all I had to say about that particular topic. The more preparation you put into it, the better your outcome will be. I'm Bill. I am the Salty Old Marine. I hope you found this useful. Please like, share, subscribe, tell a friend, leave a comment, and as always, have a great day.